I am honored to have Juno Award-winning musician Steve Bell join me today. He is a songwriter, a mentor, a storyteller, a social justice advocate, just to name a few things. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's good to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. And I don't know if you knew this, but you've been called a Canadian national treasure.
I think I said that.
Did you? You said
I think I wrote that copy.
Well, you know, I look at your career. I've been following your career for a long time. You've written you've released over 20 CDs,
20 CDs,
2,000 concerts.
Yep.
You've had such a prolific career, but it feels to me like you've kind of crafted how you want it to be. You haven't signed up for a big marketing machine or, you know, what a lot of artists kind of sell their soul.
You know what? It's not so much deliberate. Like in my early years, I really wanted the big recording contract and went down to Nashville to try to get the attention of, you know, the people that could make those kinds of things happen. So what I ended up doing happened just because the cavalry didn't come over the hill. And at a certain point, you know, I just had to realize with my manager, Dave, that we just had to make something happen if we wanted to do this. And so it was kind of low and slow. Like, you know, we just sort of started doing humble concerts and not expecting a lot, but kept learning from everything and kept our relationships good. And it has slowly built at a manageable pace. And it's always been good. Yeah, we've been really fortunate, really blessed.
Yeah, I don't know, it just seems to suit your personality. You don't seem like the kind of person like, I want to be a rock star.
You know, I never did that. I mean, I think what you really wish is that someone could come and take care of the problems.
Yeah.
So you could just focus on your craft.
Yeah.
You know, so it'd be nice if someone paid the bills and someone took care of all the details and we could just do our thing. Because, you know, Dave loves doing sound and I love doing music and all the rest of the stuff is actually what we do most of. But in the end, like everybody has to clean toilets. Like, and in the end, that's good. I think that sort of keeps if you're especially in ministry or music or arts, it sort of keeps you to some degree grounded, right? So that you sort of realize, no, this is a service that we offer, and it's labor and it's art and all that kind of stuff. But it's a craft, yeah.
And this craft for you started in prison.
Yeah.
But you weren't actually in prison. You were only 8, so you couldn't have been in prison,
but
right?
I was in prison, but not as a prisoner. No, my father is a Baptist minister. And he was, when I was about 7, 8 years old, he was pastoring a church in Drumheller, Alberta. And the government built a federal prison there. And Dad was a little burnt out from the church, and my mom had been going through some hard issues, mental illness, anxiety disorder, depression, really bad. And the church back then didn't really have a very good catcher's mitt for mental illness, especially if you're a pastor's wife.
Even today, we have a lot of work
I
to do in that area.
We sure do, yeah. And so Dad, you know, sort of pulled away from that church and took the job as a prison chaplain in Drumheller. And ironically, the inmates had no problem with my mom being unwell. You know, they welcomed her, and it was kind of the place that our family could be safely broken and sort of cared for. It was lovely. It was there I learned to play guitar. It was the inmates that used to gather on Saturday afternoons to have jam sessions, and I got invited in when I was 8 when they heard that I wanted to play, and so I'd be there every Saturday afternoon in that circle with my arm over the guitar.
Isn't that crazy? Because nowadays, like, you'd almost think if your parent is a prison chaplain, they'd like want to protect their kids maybe from bad influences, or, you know.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. Like, I remember Dad always saying that the safest place for a child is in a federal prison. Like, it's there's something about innocence and childhood that they want to protect. And I actually, a lot of those guys became like good mentors for me. I mean, some of their lives were, well, obviously there was trouble with their lives and all that. But at no point did anybody try to influence me in any negative way. Exactly the opposite, actually.
Trying to protect you from taking the path that they have.
Yeah, and give me advice and you know, so right through my teen years, you know, I had guys that were good friends that talked to me about my life, and that I would share who I was with, and it was like a mentoring kind of a situation. I don't know, it was great. It's surprising. I mean, this is federal prison too.
Yeah.
You know, so this was people that had done things enough to spend a lot of time in prison.
Wow.
I loved them. I just did. Yeah.
Do you think these roots of you being in prison, your dad's work, all of that is what gave you such a passion nowadays? You're such an advocate for social justice causes. You've worked with Compassion Canada, World Vision, Canadian Food Grain Bank.
Well, yeah, but I do remember, okay, this is in Drumheller, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, after coming home from a chapel one day and saying, and excuse the language, but saying to Dad, how come there's so many Indians in jail? You know, and Dad saying, why would you ask that question?
Mm.
You know, no, sorry, not why are so many Indians in jail. I said, is there something wrong with Indians? And he said, why would you ask that question? I says, and I noticed that demographically, it was out of proportion to what you saw in the streets, you saw in prison, way more. And so I said that there's sort of more of them inside than on the outside. Is there something wrong with them? Because I loved them. These are my friends, you know. And I remember my dad just saying, that's the question you need to ask for the rest of your life, right? Because I was too young to really understand the sort of the systemic injustices that create that kind of environment for First Nations people. We didn't know anything about residential schools. We didn't know anything about the displacement of nations and the breaking of treaties. None of us knew any of that, right? But Dad kind of did, and just said, just keep on asking that question. And I think that's what set me, you know. And then you met, you know, guys in prison from all walks of life. And when you started hearing their stories, and you realize how many of them came from poverty situations, you know, and you realize that at the root of a lot of these behaviors is deprivation, you know, emotional and economic and social alienation, all these things. And then you start looking at scriptures, and you start, you know, seeing Yahweh constantly bringing in from the margins, you know, the alien and the orphan and the widowed, and these, you know, these code for not the in-group. Right? And Yahweh, in Yahweh's sort of kingdom, brings those people into the center from the margins. And so you see that and you say that has to inform our Christian walk, or we may not be Christians.
And for you, using, you know, the platform that you have to be able to be a voice for so many people that are marginalized, including Indigenous issues, which I feel like is something whose time has come almost in Canada. Like there seems to be.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I think, yeah, there's certainly ferment, you know, and Indigenous people are finding their own strong voice and remembering their history, remembering their traditions, remembering their wisdoms, and they're really good. You know, I mean, no people group is going to have everything, you know, but what they have to offer. I mean, I sometimes wonder, you know, in the face of the climate change and the problems that we're seeing right now, if maybe one of the reasons why First Nations people have been so resilient, when you look at the pressure on them over the last 5 generations, they should have been wiped out. I mean, culturally at least, you know, and it hasn't happened. And there's
a resurgence almost.
There's a resurgence there. And I just wonder, even as a Christian, if God hasn't given them that, because we kind of need what they know now to reset. Because our culture and our economics and our banking and our food structures and our transport, everything is so out of whack with how the world actually works. And if we don't listen to the people who have learned to listen to that, we're in big trouble.
It is a gift that they can give us. And,
Yeah.
you know, you've been so great about giving so many different people platform. I think that's why God gives us platforms, in a sense, to give
Is to give platforms, yeah.
to
Blessed to be a
people.
blessing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've given a platform, of course, to so many artists as well. Tell me about this mentoring gene that you have, that you really want to give people an opportunity.
Well, I kind of think of it that way. I just like other musicians, you know, and I you know, when I'm on stage, so Mike Jansen, my piano player, who is fantastic, and I take him on the road, and I get to sit on stage and watch people listen to him, and I see their bodies react to this unbelievable musicianship, this work that he's done, and that's just pure joy for me, you know. Like, I'm glad if they like me too, right? But to watch, to be able to sort of take people and expose them to music, they necessarily wouldn't go out. You know, your average sort of person in the church pew might not frequent a jazz bar to hear the great players. But if I can bring that guy to them, and they can see what can come out of a person who's committed their life to that kind of excellence, you know, you just see their cosmos explode. It's really wonderful to watch.
I think
so it's not largesse on my part. It's just I get a kick out of it. And plus, I just love them. I love other musicians, and when I work with them and I see them play, I learn so much. Even if it's not my instrument. So what I've learned from my bass player, from my drummer, from my keyboard players, from my guitar players, and from the orchestras, you just learn different approaches of music, different nuances that you'd never pick up by just practicing on your own.
And we get to be the recipient of all of that. We're so blessed. And you actually have a great concert coming up in Hamilton this weekend.
Yeah, yeah, at
West Highland.
West Highland Church, right,
Yeah.
in Hamilton with the Hamilton Philharmonic.
That sounds amazing.
So 2 nights, Friday and Saturday night there. And yeah, that's a really cool thing. Mike Jansen did those scores. And there's the thing about symphony that I think is amazing, even as Christians, you know, think theologically about it. You've got 60 people behind me, all with multi-thousands of dollars worth of instruments, and all playing at a level far greater than I am capable of, all capable of being front and center on that stage, but all submitting that personal excellence to one score, right? And you see these many come into one thing, and another thing happens. It's called majesty. And we don't get a lot of experiences anymore in our cultures of majesty, you know. We don't go, you know, we're not out in nature as much anymore because we're just too tied to our little entertainment devices. And, you know, there's mosquitoes out there and there's bugs and all that.
It's hot,
you know,
it's cold.
Yeah, it's hot, it's cold, you know, so, and so we never get taken out of ourselves. And we rule our little worlds all the time. And to be in a situation where you got 60 or 70 or 80 musicians all at the top of their game, all playing these unbelievable instruments, these beautiful scores, all submitting their personal excellence to one thing that's not them. And this third thing happens. And again, I love watching the audience, them gasp, you know, at certain moments, you know, when the scores just kind of build to that peak or just drop off suddenly. You know, and you just sort of feel people's stomachs come up. It's the best. It's so fun to watch. But theologically, symphony is theologically correct.
Why do you say
It's
that?
Trinity. It's the unity of God. It's the three yet one. You know, the beauty of God. That God is not God is one, not like a tree is one, but like a forest is one. It's Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Three yet one.
That's so good.
Right, and so you get that experience of the triune being of God in a symphony, rather than say a solo concert, and those are nice too, but it's different, yeah.
But the one we have this weekend that people need to go to is a symphony.
Yeah,
it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for stopping by to visit us. Steve.
Thanks for
Always
having
love
me.
it.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. You want to make sure to check out the symphony this weekend, December 7th and 8th.